Oh, you can have to plug it in the battery's fine, isn't it?
Batteries are at the moment. Batteries are right at the moment.
And how long you got? 300 minutes? It's about 65 hours.
It's the biggest battery.
Yeah.
Really badly. Really. Not remember my surname. Is it? You're getting filmed here, Orlando. Video makeup.
Hey kids!
Pictures of me doing so.
Oi, oi. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to come in, shut the door, sit down, sit down, put your seats. In you come. One shutting that room. Who is it? February Poltroon. Thank you all for coming. As is customary, either me or is it Orlando Harrison? Orlando, isn't it?
That is in fact my name, yes.
Yeah. Not Charlie.
So he's only known me 10 years.
It's not Charlie for you.
No.
So Orlando Harrison. And he'd like to kick off this evening with you what? Oh goodness me, silly me. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, of course we'd like to welcome our Poltroon Balloon Baboon! Poltroon Balloon Baboon! Big round of applause! There he is. There's no projection this evening because we ain't got a projector, but we were going to have either Cocoon or Platoon. It's up to you for next time. What was you, Cocoon or Platoon?
Cocoon.
Yeah, thanks for enthusiasm. Orlando, come on up.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Thanks to everybody for coming. Right, this is the next version of the novel that I've been writing. I've written since last month. I've been on a bit of a rush actually. I've written 2 more paragraphs. Yeah, there's no stopping me. Okay. I've been looking back at the videos of me reading. I've noticed that I have a tendency to talk far too fast and to garble my words. So I put a note here to read slowly and clearly. Okay, so I'd appreciate some feedback after.
You're shy.
What's that? I haven't started yet.
Exactly.
Okay. I After Laura left me, I tried to write a novel, but everything I wrote was shit. I'd sit in Wetherspoons with my laptop, trying to turn my fucked up life into fiction. Maybe I thought a book could confer dignity on my failure or make it less real. If I got published, then my failure wouldn't really be failure at all. It would be like I'd meant it all along. But it didn't get published. It didn't even get started. I got a fairly good first paragraph with a straightforward economy of style, prose that sounded natural, like the way a normal, reasonably intelligent person might actually talk. The story started, predictably, with a man starting a novel in Wetherspoons after being dumped by his girlfriend. I changed Laura's name to Lorna, and the man's aged 26.
We know all this.
That way I figured I could use the last 4 years of my life as material. But now I'm going to be doing this every month for the next 2 years. That's the plan. I tried to describe our first meeting. The pink beret, the bleach, the lumpy mascara, the infected lip piercing, the skull with wings she drew on my arm in blue biro, her skinny, trembling hands, the razor, etc., etc. I tried to be straightforward, unpoetic, and let the facts speak for themselves. I described the chicken carcass, left over from the meal we'd shared, just like the one in front of me now. Our first baby, she'd sniggered. Here I stopped. This wasn't fiction. It was what had actually happened. If anybody who knew her read it, they'd know it was her. She'd kill me. Her brother would kill me. Her dad... I changed the beret into a pillbox and the skull into a spider. I gave her blue hair and transported the whole thing to Manchester. Our first baby, she sniggered. I kept that in. That was good. It would have been my third draft. Novel 1.3, is, as it's stated on my laptop, last modified 10/14. It was unusually mild for the time of year. I've been in the Earl of Rochester since 8 o'clock, so I would have been drunk. After staring at my chicken for a long time, I wrote, those delicate bones, that pale flesh. Lorna had fallen off her bicycle and broken a rib a week before we met. Our first fuck had been, initially, a delicate operation, characterised by sharp shrieks and nervous apologies. She was very thin. Yet she took the pain with a stoic sarcasm that scared me. This was fiction. There had been no bicycle, and Lorna had never broken a rib, as far as I knew. But she was very thin, and frequently sarcastic. A stoic sarcasm that scared me. I realised that I was going to have to refer to her stoic sarcasm, or I'd have to get Lorna to say something stoically sarcastic. I thought for a while and wrote, she was very thin, yet she took the pain with a stoic sarcasm that scared me. Break another one and I'll give you a wish, she said sarcastically. I read it back to myself. I realised that I couldn't have stoic sarcasm and sarcastically in the same paragraph, so I removed the word sarcasm from the first sentence. She was very thin. She took the pain with a stoicism that scared me. Break another one and I'll give you a wish, she said sarcastically. That was better. But it sounded brutally masochistic. But Lorna had always been a bit strange that way. She often shocked me. So delicate, but so nasty. Despair rose in me, and I thought of the hundreds of badly groomed, unfashionable men sitting in Wetherspoons, gazing into chickens, clumsily attempting to conjure up the ghosts of their ex-girlfriends. Thank you. Balloon Baboon.
Part of that again next month. Right, I've got a few names in the book. First alternately. Well, you don't have to. Anyone want to step up to the mark? Hmm? No? Well, we're gonna, Simeon, come on. With an apocalyptic warning, is that right? Somewhere between a cautionary tale and an apocalyptic warning.
Right. Never done anything like this before, so bear with me. And I'm dyslexic as well, so. Right. I've named this the Unknown Niggle. Around the end of August 2001, we were deployed on an operation called Op Bessemer to Macedonia as part of a NATO force to intervene in a civil war between the Albanian insurgents and the Macedonian government, and then to oversee an arms amnesty as part of something drawn up called the Ohrid Agreement. Under the terms of the Ohrid Agreement, the Macedonian government agreed to devolve greater political power and cultural recognition to the Albanian minority. The Albanian side, in turn, agreed to abandon separatist demands and fully recognise all Macedonian institutions. Yep, it was fucking boring. Positive, but it was boring. Around the first week of September on that tour, there was a rumour fluttering around that we were going to go to a place called Afghanistan. Afghanistan? We thought it must be somewhere near Pakistan. I'd say every last one of my peers were blissfully clueless as to its location, political history, and the current situation at the time. But none of us had ever heard of it before, really. Incidentally, as it transpires, we've been meddling with the affairs of that land for 180 years now. As to why nothing about that place, well, next to nothing about that place was ever taught in history or geography in our educational establishments, at least on the secondary level, speaks volumes to me. I guess in Victorian times, at the height of the British Empire's powers, the Anglo-Afghan Empire must have had an attractive ring for it for our bankers, traders and politicians. Yeah, they keep cropping up, don't they? It's nothing new, folks. But the dream of a replica Anglo-Indian Empire, alas for the East India Company and the coffee houses and such like, was never to be. But hey, we're still at it. We're at it big time. In January '95, after an emotionally turbulent childhood, and at the age of 18, I joined the army. I did it to get away from home. I guess it was a bid to, one, establish my independence, and two, become a man. You may have picked up on two ironies there already. Firstly, as a soldier, you're dependent on the army for everything. And secondly, you certainly don't become your own person. What you become is what they call a lean, green, mean fighting machine, or some sort of cyborg with an operating system installed, which is designed to process only one type of software, orders from a superior. I know, it's hilarious. I didn't know it, but this formed a sort of internal conflict that was to take me quite a long time to figure out, but it always ran deep. I wasn't quite mature or emotionally developed enough at the time to recognise what was conflicting what. Plus, I was always too busy trying to fit in anyway. Of course, initiative also is essential to playing a role, and instinct is shaped by the repetition of intense training. I did gel, but not without this unknown niggling feeling. It was always a conflict in my soul. My career progressed. I was sent on a lot of courses, I got promoted, etc. I served with the Specialist Airborne Unit, the members of which are trained for particular skills such as jumping into areas of battle from an aeroplane with a parachute, as killing enemy soldiers, long and short range reconnaissance, building temporary bridges, blowing up permanent ones and railway lines, breaching minefields, demolitions, setting booby traps, playing around with explosives and much, much more. Generally, we provided what's called battlefield engineering support to the parachute regiment, battalions and special forces. All these roles are played in theatres such as Northern Ireland, Angola, Rwanda, Bosnia, Kenya, Kosovo, Sierra Leone, Macedonia, Afghanistan and Iraq, and a few others. I did enjoy my time overall, The physically and mentally tough and active lifestyle, along with the ego trip and kudos of being in that particular unit, did have a great appeal to me, I must admit. It certainly provided a strong sense of achievement. Also, I believed I was part of a greater good and doing a great job for the world in general. We could well have been, but this unknown niggle remained, this itch that wouldn't go away. Lying fast asleep in a derelict, bombed-out X3-star hotel in Macedonia, on a stuffy afternoon, on a green makeshift bed, I was dreaming of being in a hot, stuffy carvery in the UK, munching away on roast beef and broccoli, when a boot lodged itself in my ribs, and some twat, who I used to call a mate, shouted, "Oi, Minnsy, some packy cunts are flying airplanes into buildings in America, come and have a look." Really, I mumbled. Fuck off, I mumbled again. Rolled over and went back to sleep. When I later awoke, there was a buzz amongst the blokes, an air of incredulity and astonishment. So fucking wild, I seem to remember thinking, what's he got to do with us? The signals blokes had set up Sky on the big screen in the dining hall. Upon that screen were the most astounding images of some big buildings, apparently called the World Trade Center, undergoing to what my experience looked very much like a controlled demolition. And that's for another chapter. Yeah. It seemed like moments later, when some blithering buffoon, some purdy mouse eater called George W. Bush, was declaring war on, yep, you guessed it, Afghanistan, and then later Iraq. I felt like I just swallowed a lump hammer. We already fucking knew it. Something was wrong, very wrong. But what also disturbed me was that nobody seemed to realise. I didn't hear a single, hang on a minute, it's just incredible. Something began to intensify that niggle. It all seemed very linked. Of course, very soon afterwards came the orders for deployment for our squadron with Tupar on a mission called Op Fingal to Kabul. Soon afterwards, I'd left the army, and I was a civvy trying to do what civvies do, and that's also for another chapter. I was beginning to familiarise myself with a novelty called the internet and Google, etc. A while later, as a new convert, I started asking our Heavenly Father Google some questions that I'd been carrying. Sort of questions that when posed to people I knew were met with a puzzled or blank stare and a look of obvious concern for my mental well-being. As numerous shards of information began to bounce back at me from the screen of almighty Google and the holy YouTube, a grainy picture began to emerge, one that I really didn't like. A strange mixture of feelings began to accompany me. Feelings of that niggle slowly subsiding, being satisfied with a hint of answers but being replaced with fear and anger. There was a lot of frightening and outrageous information which I, for my own peace of mind, clearly needed to thoroughly research. I needed a lack of validation to ease my fears. The pile of books, magazines and newspapers began to build beside my desktop PC. Unfortunately, in the end, the official versions of events were so contradictory and ridiculously contrived that I decided they were clearly blatant lies. I could not understand at first, but understand I eventually did. And it began to dawn on me, a little bit like Poirot having a dark eureka moment, when the revelation of the guilty party, the motive, the execution of the crime, and all the cover stories begin to fit together in his little grey cells. I began to see the light. This illumination gives one a new perspective by which one sees the story unravel along the hour of time with the predictability of an episode of Hollyoaks. Now we jump to today and we see one sovereign nation after another systematically dismantled using the tools of foreign policy, media spin, sanctions, black ops, coups and brute force along with sickening justifications. We have 42 allied military bases strategically placed around Iran, for instance. This sovereign nation's invasion has been on the agenda for years. The insidious plan is unfolding just as they want it to. I actually do hope there are some snooping centrist type scumbags watching or listening to this. Whether they are or not, I hereby nail my colours to a different mast. I'm absolutely sick, tired and disgusting with Western foreign policy. in all areas around the globe. I don't swallow the filthy web of putrid lies and shit we're bombarded with every second of every day regarding the excuses as to why the UK, the US and other G20 countries are bullying and dominating the world, or should I say the third world, stitching up countries who simply don't buy into the globalist agenda and in turn bringing about their downfall. I don't care who you are. If you try and tell me that Iran is a threat to the world and we are the good guys trying to save the world from evil Iranian madmen with nuclear bombs, you're tragically deluded and severely misinformed. What I believe the media still haven't told us yet is that we, the UK, France, Canada and the US already have Iran lined by warships. We are the aggressors. Thousands of innocent people will probably end up dying. Sensationalists? I don't think so. Surely we cannot forget the diabolical farce in Iraq and Afghanistan. My friends and colleagues, our young service personnel being maimed, young lives being extinguished needlessly, and millions of civilians dead. A million civilians dead. Even more loved ones grieving terribly on all sides. All, yes, all for control of fucking oil, but excused by utter lies and devious spin. The media don't tell you that. I hope there will be millions of people on the streets of this and every city and town in the UK causing absolute havoc in protest to this. The latest in a gruesome catalogue of abominations, the very essence of humanity, by an elite global vampires who think they run the show. We are truly led by the least among us, the least intelligent, the least noble and the least visionary. It's time for everybody to pull their heads out their asses and do something. That something is to take the power back. Stop listening to them and thinking that who you vote for will make a scrap of difference. Please open your eyes to these blatant lies. Take your attention off the cheery-faced media people telling you that the version of events the government want you to hear, whilst we sleepwalk into hell itself, instead of sitting there being hypnotised by detritus on the TV and act. Think about your children and your grandchildren. If there is anything anyone should hate, it's this hideous system of greed and corruption which drives the machine of war and systematic death, and which leads to the pain of and which feeds on the pain of the downtrodden. If you think this is a bit dramatic, I don't apologise. That's just how it is. You've been a great audience. Thank you very much, and have a great evening.
Hello, good evening. Hello, is that? Do it like that. Do it like that. Well, this one's called the Faggot Quran. It all began that evening when I got arrested on charges of treason after I'd done a reading at Poltroon on the 21st of February 2012. My mate Simeon had just got up before me and done a rather rousing speech, declaring that we should take power back into his own hands. And being somewhat fired up by his words, Clusterfuck James gets up and starts doing a little rant about how I've been sleeping with rather influential members of the medical and neuropathology professions for over 15 years now. And being the persuasive little fuck I am, I'd managed to get various papers published through the back door, so to speak, in medical journals on the subject of an acquired personality disorder called hubris syndrome. Hubris syndrome's traits are numerous, but include A, seeing the world primarily as an arena in which to exercise power and glory, B, a messianic manner, C, exaggerated self-belief bordering on omnipotence, D, an idea that one is accountable solely to history or God, and E, a total loss of contact with reality. It's remarkably easy to get a disorder classified. You just get the papers published and then it exists. Having written and published some on the subject, myself, medical and my legal friends were in the process of going through the courts, obtaining a section under the 1983 Mental Health Act, which was for our government, saying that they suffered all the symptoms of a debilitating personality disorder, they weren't fit to run a government, and they should be locked up in the Maudsley against their will and force-fed lithium by scary African nurses until they came down a bit. Of course, having gone that far, this cunt couldn't stop there and now suggested that we kill the Queen. I wasn't being metaphorical and I wasn't joking. I really did suggest that I thought that we should kill the Queen, and while we're at it, we should stab Boris Johnson as well. Through the heart. Both of them. I said it wouldn't be hard to do what with GPS tracking systems and Twitter nowadays, and I promised the people at Poltroon that if they did it, they'd obviously be killed in the process. But when they were killed, they'd become martyrs and they'd go to heaven and they'd be met by 72 virgins, and each time they slept with one of the virgins, they'd find her virgin again. The penis of you, the elected, would never soften. Your erection would be eternal. The sensation you felt each time you made love would be utterly delicious and out of this world, and were you to experience it in this world, you would faint. You would marry 70 virgins beside the woman you married on earth, and all would have appetising vaginas. It's tough shit for girl martyrs or gay martyrs, you don't get none of that. So some bright spark in the audience, we'd already been watched by police the month before, they decided to report me and I got arrested on charge of treason for my seditious words. Needless to say, my arrest didn't go down too well with Linda. I'm not having it, Terry, she said. I'm not having one of my gay boys being sent down. They'll rip him apart. He's too cute to be in jail. Dave the Hat's like, yeah, he might have been a cunt, but he was our cunt. Orlando's like, good show, old chap. Linda was incensed at my incarceration in the Tower of London. To be honest, I was having quite a good time. The Poltroon baboon's sister used to go out with one of the guards there, so I passed my time in a very pleasant Kettering haze. But Linda, she weren't having none of it. She started a free little fucker Facebook page. Isabel provided the premises, and things just sort of spiralled out of control. The first time it happened was the first time I went to Ibiza. The Doc and me had taken a couple of months out. We went on tour around Spain and the islands. No clubs, just pure countryside business. We rented what I considered at the time to be a mansion in Ibiza, and it was perfect. There was a swimming pool and a local parrot who came to visit us every day. The first day there, I fell asleep during the daytime and I dreamt that I was being chased through a London tube tunnel along the platform close to the wall. As I passed one of the London Underground workers' service doors, a hand reached out and dragged me through it. I ended up in a type of conference room, people sat on chairs, whiteboard with stuff written on it, a man standing at the front of the class, obviously giving a lecture that I'd been pulled into. Everyone looked round and the guy who was kind of teaching the class looked at me and said, "Ah, you finally made it. We've been looking for you. Welcome to the Dream Resistance Movement." So far, so what? There's nothing worse than a writer writing about his dreams, eh? It's lazy, who cares? So then a year after that, I go to America to suit Africa for the first time. It's quite a revelation. It's got the same red, fertile, musty soil that Ibiza has. We're driving through internal South Africa on our way to Lesotho. We hit a guest house and I go to sleep. I dream I'm walking along a roadside. It's unclear where it is, but I'm by a hedgerow or some long bushes. A hand comes out of the hedge, pulls me through it, and I'm in the same room as I was in the dream in Ibiza, except this time the teacher guy turns around and says, "Hey, nice to see you again. We've been waiting for you. Where have you been?" That was the second time I encountered the Dream Resistance Movement. Ideas start to sink in, flies into battery acid. I quite enjoyed my time in the Tower of London. There was a certain kudos attached to it. While I was in, the Jubilee came and went without incident. No one cared. I was getting messages from the outside through letters. Eventually the guard smuggled me in a mobile. I heard there'd been an attempt to pass through what became known as the Hubris Bill, but the personality disorder was banned by Parliament. However, there they come now. However, it was 2.5 million Twitter followers. With over 2.5 million Twitter followers, Linda was now full-time in her Free Little Fucker campaign, the FTLF. The first indication that something was up was the Scientologist boat, the Freewind, which was docked in Bremerhaven in Germany, was destroyed in an unidentified terrorist attack. Obviously, all those sailing lessons from Rage and Alex came in handy. The Freewind had been where Scientologists taught the highest level of Scientology, the operating theatre level 8. I was kidnapped by a Scientologist when I was 18. It's a boring story, so I won't go into it. But I've never been too enamoured with them since then. I wasn't sad it happened. Scientologists teach that they're aliens from the future who have fled into the present to reclaim their true selves, and it's only when they eventually come and read the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard himself, which are buried in a vault in the New Mexican desert, etched onto 78 RPM discs with a wind-up gramophone with them, so you don't need electricity to hear them, they will be eternal. And it's when they find these and hear these discs that they learn their true nature about themselves and continue to travel backwards through time, erasing all of the mistakes that they've made in their own past until they reach the singularity that led to those mistakes and can start their own futures again. I just made all of that up. The Scientologists are actually humans inhabited by aliens. These aliens are fleeing from a nuclear apocalypse that happened 75 million years ago. Their leader, Xenu, drugged them with alcohol and glycol and transported them in planes similar to the DC airplanes to Earth, where he proceeded to bury them under volcanoes and blow them up with hydrogen bombs. Their souls were freaked out and had attached themselves to humans, and Scientology teaches that we must detach these souls from our bodies in order to become clear human beings. Anyway, we weren't going to teach that shit on that boat no more. No one connected it with anything else. Everyone hates the Scientologists. Everyone thinks Ron L. Hubbard is a cunt. Logistics were the first to wake up in the UK. Through the implementation of ZIL lanes throughout London, every lorry driver in the southeast was politicised. They weren't able to do their deliveries except for 4 hours during the night during the run-up to the Olympics, and the situation was intolerable. Infiltrating their union through their base in Belvedere, the food crisis started. Slowly, over the couple of months leading up to the Olympics, stocks in supermarkets started to dwindle. Not enough so that anyone on the shop floor noticed. God forbid the Telegraph got wind of a fettuccine famine. But a few stashed crates here and there from every warehouse worker, and soon the warehouses started to feel like the caverns they were. Simply hiding video senders in all of the warehouses fucked up the radio frequency ID scanners used to keep track of how much and where the stock was, and all stock checks started to go haywire. The boys on the roads declared a gang truce, the second in London's history, the first being during the Blackberry riots. The postcode wars were put on hold, and everyone agreed to take a loss for a couple of months. Various people cut the cocaine with crystal meth, anyone doing coke for the build-up to the Olympics, and believe me, London was flooded, found themselves unable to sleep for days and days and days. We started a show called Poltroon, Prisoners of Poetry on Resonance FM, radio for people in jail. Readers of Poltroon gave out coded messages on air to all of our people locked down. We didn't even have to code them that much. It's amazing what you can get away with poetry or art or fiction. Word got around fast, it just grew. The doctors were the first to go on strike due to pensions, the NHS bill, and these really unpopular ZIL lanes which were creating an inverse banlieue in the east. With the hospitals being manned by the army, the police's 700-strong squad of total policing felt belittled by the army's presence, and the struggle of power between Bernard Hogan Howe, the chief of the Met, and General Sir Peter Wall, the professional head of the British Army, reached an unfortunate zenith with the H's Orestyle showdown at a press conference. So what with the food shortages, no one sleeping, and doctors on strike, the prison riots just served to be the icing on the cake, really. The police and the army were overstretched, but the Olympics still had to go ahead. So much coverage was given to the ongoing social problems and worries that the opening ceremony would be an unmitigated disaster. Little did they know that we had that locked down already. And Maya knew Danny Ball from time. I myself DJ'd at his son's 7th birthday party, so the opening ceremony was already taken care of. At its climax during the much-fated dance sequence, and as the Rolling Stones launched into a dreadful version of Satisfaction, there would be a Busby Berkeley-type overhead aerial pan, which would zoom out to the dancers all spelling out the words, "Fuck you, Seb Coe." It was really quite beautiful. So no one really noticed that the Alabama 3 were going to put on an impromptu gig on Parliament Square on Friday the 27th of July 2012. Thanks to a handy redistribution of various bits of equipment all over central London, squats and flats, and a handy mini-riot hosted by Oliver's Transsexual Soho Brigade, this Covent Garden party served as a foil, as when the Alabama set up and started to play, no one looked to the sky. Simeon had been noticeably absent from all the ongoing proceedings. He'd felt guilty at me being locked up, and had been in deep thought. He was good at keeping secrets. It's easy to make bombs nowadays. Everyone's read Fight Club. Not everyone's a trained paratrooper though. Simeon put on his headphones, turned up Thunderstruck by AC/DC, and having persuaded some of his mates in the 1st Para Regiment to do him one last favour, he jumps out of the plane they'd stolen from the barracks just as they neared Big Ben. No one suspected an army aeroplane. Simeon's parachute opens, a large anarchy symbol painted onto the nylon. The word parachute means to fall and protect against. Simeon mutters primes into paras, opens his eyes, and all that is solid melts into air. All that is holy is profaned.